Yeah, g'day guys, Steve here from Dirt Bike ADV. Got another bike, but bear with me, it's a long story. So basically, if you go right back, started riding bikes with my son, just to fill you on the whole history. Once he turned 18, I got shafted and he went riding with his mates. We were riding enduro bikes and 2-strokes and 4-strokes, just lots of bits and pieces. But once he started riding and got his license, I thought, well, I'm going to start doing a bit of adventure riding. Went and bought a Beta 480, thought, oh yeah, that'll do me. Ended up putting a tower on a screen, rode that round for a while and thought that was pretty handy. Wasn't really set up for long travel, so it was more of like a lightweight adventure bike. But as I said, put a screen on it and everything, so then it wasn't much good for enduro riding. So I just accepted the fact that I was going to have two bikes. So I sold the 480, bought a 690 and bought a Beta 390. KDM 690 obviously, and that worked really well. I was really pleased. I could go enduro riding with my son on the odd occasion, go out with a few mates and just do a bit of lightweight ADV riding, local stuff where you chuck the bike on the back of the car. You might drive somewhere and you'll do a 2-day loop or something like that, or I might just ride for a 2-day loop or an overnighter from here on the 390. And of course I had the 690 for the longer stuff where you're away on the bike for a week or two, you know, and you basically ride everywhere you go. Again, trying to keep the story short, sold the 690 to buy the update model with the extra counterbalancer and sold the 390 to go to another 480. Couldn't find a 480 for love nor money. I had to buy a new one, 17 grand at the time, right on the end of COVID. They were quite expensive. So I ended up buying a Sherco 500. And again, the 690s, I was trying to find the later model one second hand and again, just couldn't sort of find one second hand. As it was, an AJP turned up. So I just took advantage of the AJP, love the AJP, that's going nowhere, the PR7, and bought a Sherco because I couldn't find a Beta 480. As at that time, bike prices were a bit ridiculous, so I sort of just was happy to accept whatever I could get. Recently sold the Sherco, and this is the replacement for the Sherco. So this is my lightweight adventure bike and slash enduro bike. I've still got the AJP, that's going nowhere, as I said. So yeah, why then did I buy a 95 model Yamaha TT350? Again, bear with me, long story. Over in the Western District recently, it's winter now and you can see it's bloody cold out here. I was over in the Western District doing a bit of camping fishing in the car. So it was a bit cold for the bike, sort of right in the middle of winter in Victoria here, it gets a bit cold. So we either plan trips and go north, or we basically don't ride. It just gets too cold and miserable. But anyway, so I did a bit of fishing and camping over in the Western District just for about 3 or 4 nights. Was happened to be in a little town called Harrow, and there's a coffee shop there one morning, just sitting there having a nice coffee and an egg and bacon roll or something, and all these old vintage bikes are going past me, a beautiful PE75, an IT175, and I'm watching these bloody bikes going past, and it turns out they had the Harrow Vinduro on. Now, I'd heard about that event before, but it wasn't until I walked outside and looked down and I'd seen all these people in the caravan park and thought, hang on, there's something going on here. And I went, oh, the Harrow Vinduro. So I was there for camping and fishing, but I wasn't going to miss this opportunity. Went down there and started walking around, introduced myself to a few people, and yeah, I just couldn't help myself. Got the GoPros out and did a bit of a video. But just walking around talking to those guys, all great blokes, all guys my age, of course, and we're all riding bikes. All those guys are riding bikes that they loved when they were kids. And when I was growing up, I was the youngest of 5. There wasn't a lot of money in the family, so we sort of couldn't have, there was no motorbikes. Dad bought us a little Gemini 50 at one stage, and that was about as good. That was a copy of a Honda Z50. That was about as good as it got for us. But once I sort of started working, of course, then you can buy your own motorbikes, and you know, and so all these guys were doing the same as me. A lot of these guys have been racing all their life, but for me, it's about, oh, geez, I would have loved one of these when I was a kid. But, you know, and even into my younger adult years, the Tenere 660 was always a bike that I loved, and the KDX 200, the IT 175s. Funny enough, the TT350s never came onto my radar. I never remember seeing these around as a young fella for some reason, but after talking to a couple of guys and doing a video, and you can have a look at that video if you want. It's the Very video, Victorian Vintage Enduro Riders Incorporated. But standing and talking about these TT350s, and I'm going, that is a seriously nice looking bike. And so At the time, of course, I'm looking for the replacement for the Sherco, and I thought, I didn't want to spend big dollars. I didn't want a late model full-on race bike, so I was looking at something a little bit older, maybe like a KTM 450 EXC, so the 2008, 9, 10 sort of models. They had a lovely 72mm stroke or a 525 or something along those lines from KTM. I was thinking maybe I might just drop back to a, heaven forbid, hopefully no one's around, I might drop back to a trail bike, just something that was just going to be a little bit easier to ride. Still had to be lightweight because I want to chuck it on the tow bar of the car and drive to Birdsville and ride across the Simpson and back again. So it's still got to be reasonably lightweight. Yeah, just didn't want necessarily a full-on race bike with the dead flat seat and the littler tanks and that sort of stuff. So yeah, I was sort of looking around at the time, and so I thought, I'm standing at this Harrow Enduro event looking at these 350s and going, that'd probably do the job. So I bought this bike so I can do not only lightweight adventure riding and a bit of enduro riding and a bit of fire trail stuff and getting lost and clearing my head up in the bush just up here. I can do enduro events too. So the Harrow looks really good. I've had a look. The Wanron event looks really good. Bush tracks, lots of single trail. It's not a race, it's just a turn up and do as many laps as you feel like, and obviously talk a lot about motorbikes and have jokes and have a lot of fun. So I thought, right, I'm going to buy a bike that can do both. The TT350, by a fair margin, it was either that or the XR 350s of that era. Bikes have to be pre-88 to be in the vintage enduro riders, but they have some bikes that have run through. So this is one of them. This was released in 85, this model, and didn't change right through to about 95, 97, so to speak. So this is a run-on model, so you can still ride this bike. So this bike is an 85 model technology, but this was built in 95, this bike. Now, going a little bit further than that, I didn't want a big project bike. I've got the Ute just sitting out there behind the camera. That's my focus at the moment, and certainly that's one of the reasons I didn't want to spend another 10 or 15 grand on another bike, because I'm pumping a fair bit of money into the Ute at the moment. So I was looking for something cheaper. And of course, not only is the purchase price cheaper, I only paid $2,500 for this bike, but I can now get Club Rego, which is about $107 Rego instead of $600 Rego. And obviously I don't need a full comprehensive insurance package, so I just go a third-party tire and theft insurance package, which is now another $110. So sort of $200, $250 with your club membership, and you've got your bike registered and insured, so to speak. So it made a fair bit of sense to me. And to be honest, there's a fair bit of novelty factor too. An old 350 with a kickstart that's 6 volt, it sort of had a bit of appeal to me. So, so that's where it's come from. So yeah, just to talk about the bike. As I said, I didn't want a project bike. I didn't want a bike that was in crates or boxes or you know, all in pieces basically. So I just sort of decided that I'd try and find, you know, a bike that was, and I started out looking at the XR 350s as well too. I thought, great size bike, nice midway adventure bike. They're not super heavy, 104 to 15 kilos dry, so not that much heavier than the modern bikes. But sort of looked at the XR, and I rang me mate Brendan, and he said, oh, the XRs were a little bit of a bugger of a thing to get, because they got twin carbies, and this one has a twin carbie as well, to get running right, whereas this is a single carbie and a Venturi carbie, so a slide carbie and a Venturi carbie, so these ones are a lot easier. And she said that the Yamahas, hands down, in that generation were a much better bike. Once you get to the XR 400s, they were the market leaders, which were too late to get into the Vinduro. So I decided to go with the Yamaha 350. As I said, didn't want a project bike that I had to rebuild and do a heap of work to. So I just wanted to find one that was unmolested. So I sort of started looking around, and this one popped up, and it was interstate. I had to drive. It took me a day to get up there and back to pick it up. But this bike is unmolested. I'll grab the camera and have a walk around in a minute. But it really is unmolested. It's a very original bike, all original plastics. Normally this model would come out with a lilac. If you look closely at the frame, it's actually a bit of a purpley lilac colour, and so they had a purple lilac seat, and what else was, they had different graphics on here, and sort of like a flashy yellow and pink. It was from the 90s, so you can remember all those yellows and pinks and purples they were running with at the time. But the previous owners just put a blue seat cover on, some blue pinstripe, and obviously a blue headlight cover. So yeah, very unmolested bike. all pretty original except for the stickers, the sticker kit and the colour theme, so that's pretty good. But other than that, everything works on the bike. The tail light works, the brake lights work. The indicators aren't on it. It didn't have indicators, so I've bought some. I've actually found some original indicators for it. All the wiring's there, so that's really pleasing. The wiring hasn't been cut off like most people just start getting there with their pliers and cut all the wiring off. Again, unmolested, so all the wires are there for the indicators, because I will get this, have to get this roadworthy and registered as well too. So, but it's club rego, so it's road rego, so you can ride on the road. So yeah, all nice and original. Original guards, plastics, tank, everything's original. Speedo, original. It's done 19,000 Ks, done a few Ks, but you know, obviously the tool bag's not. That's fairly new, but yeah, apart from that, it's a pretty well original bike. So yeah, very pleased. All I'm going to do is, these are not road legal tyres, so I'll have to put some tyres on it. The front disc is buggered. I'll have to put a new front disc and some pads, put some new brake shoes in the back, and obviously the indicators and mirrors, and it's booked in for a roadworthy at the end of the month. So yeah, so it's going to be a good sort of project where I'll probably only spend a day on it, replacing some tyres and just tidying up a few little bits and pieces and putting the indicators and mirrors on, and then it'll be ready to ride. I have noticed the clutch is a little bit hard to work with, so we'll probably, I've got a new clutch cable ordered. It feels like there's a bit of tension in the clutch cable, probably stretched a little bit, I think. So yeah, new clutch cable, and pretty well that's it. Put it on the road and ride it for a while. At some stage it will be a full factory resto. I will take it all back, but I'll probably wait until the engine needs a rebuild of some description. At the moment, the engine's beautiful and sweet. It's got lots of compression. So I'm expecting to get another, at least probably a 10,000 Ks out of it. But at that stage, I'll pull the engine out, I'll sandblast and powder coat the frame, and I'll put it all back to original. So yeah, that's the long-term plan. But at this stage, very happy to ride it. So I'm just going to grab the camera, and we'll have a quick walk around, and yeah, looking forward to getting it on the road. As I say, 8595, so it's quite an older technology bike, but surprisingly it's not that far behind what the current bikes are. My son's got the 350 gas, as I say, and it's not that different. So we've got a four-stroke double overhead cam engine. Oh, g'day Jasper, how you going, mate? You're up and about now. Yeah, a bit of a stretch, huh? Yeah, righto. About an 89mm pot and a 56mm stroke, something along those lines, I think. So quite a reasonably long stroking motor, but yeah, quite a torquey motor, because they've got a dual carby, and the dual carby is just a normal slide on one side, and it's a Venturi carby on the other side. So as you put more demand on the engine, the Venturi opens the other carby and sort of lets a bit more fuel in. So apparently very torquey off the bottom, and certainly that's the way it feels. Not a racy engine. You need to give it a day's notice if you want to really wind it on. So yeah, it's certainly a different characteristic to the current, you know, the current 350, so to speak. Yeah, a 21 18-inch rear wheel combination, so pretty stock standard. The stock tyres are a bit skinnier, but I'll be running just what's on it at the moment. I've ordered some new tyres for it. Went for Pirelli MT21s, a tyre I've never had before. Certainly everyone reckons the fronts are really good, so I'm going to try those. I'm just running with a 90/90 on the front, and I think it's 120 by 90 on the rear, something along those lines. That'll fit on those rims. Monoshock suspension on the rear, but it's the linkage is on top, so they've got a particular name for it. I can't remember, but it's not underneath. The linkages are actually above the swing arm. 21 18-inch, as I say, and then the shocks are just your conventional forks, and you can see they have a fair bit of overhang past the axle there, so the old style, they're not the upside down. Yeah, so a bloody quite, in some respects, I think probably a modern engine from the time. A double overhead cam engine, produces a mighty 32 horsepower. Compared to about the modern 350s are up around about the 50 horsepower. So yeah, quite underpowered compared to the modern stuff, but a much lower compression, 9.1 I think they are compression ratio, compared to most of the 350s are up around the 13. So lower stress engine. So yeah, they'll tend to go for a bit longer. It's done 19,000 Ks this one. Not sure if it's had a rebuild yet, but certainly we'll think about that at some stage. And probably, hopefully, we'll get 5 or 10,000 Ks before it needs a rebuild. Certainly running very sweet at the moment. It's a 6-volt system, which is interesting. There's a little battery underneath here. up underneath the inside of the guard. So 6-volt battery, which tells me they should, in theory, be a lot easier to start. But time will tell. It certainly starts really well now. Obviously it's carby, so it's got a choke, and you just put a bit of choke and 1 or 2 kicks and away it goes. Idles beautifully. Drum brake rear, disc brake front. It's probably lets it down a little bit, having still a drum brake, but other than that, it's all good. Very unmolested bike, as I say. It's a kickstart, by the way, too. Obviously, there's no start button on this thing, but a very unmolested bike. Still got plugs there for their colour-coded plugs, green and bland, for the right and left hand side for indicators. So that's the indicator point there, so they'll bolt on. Same up the front. There's indicator points that go off there, and the wires are there. Speedo, brake lights, headlights, everything worked. It's an original Yamaha key. If I can get it out. It's an original Yamaha key, which is bloody, yeah, quite unusual. So yeah, pretty unmolested bike. Not original pink handlebars, but I'll probably leave those there, I reckon. And not original tool bag, as I said earlier. But yeah, as you can see, quite an original bike, guys. And so yeah, I didn't want a project bike, as I said. Just basically want to tidy it up a little bit. And get it roadworthy. I'll have to buy a new disc for it, and as I say, and I'll probably put new brake shoes in it while I'm at it. But yeah, nice original old girl. So yeah, looking forward to it. It's sort of I think in a lot of respects, sitting at that Aero Cafe and seeing those old bikes led me down to chat to all those blokes and have a look at the 350s in some detail for the first time. I think I was being led that way, and so yeah, it was meant to be. So yeah, I've got my second bike, my enduro bike, and it's going to be a little bit fun, a little bit of novelty to it. I'm sort of looking forward to, you know, riding around on something a bit different. There'll be a fair bit of enjoyment in that, and just keeping the old girl running for another 30 years, hopefully. So yeah. But anyway, guys, that's enough waffle from me. I'm going to leave it at that, and yeah, we'll probably do an update. We might even do a little bit of a when we get it registered, an ADV, a light ADV test, like I do with the Sherco and the 390, where I just do a big sort of 150k loop and see how it goes on the road, and then do my roots, rocks, and a review. Yeah, which will be very interesting. It's not a super heavy bike, as I say, but it's very interesting to see what it's like in the bush. So yeah. Anyway, guys, that's enough waffle from me. Thanks for watching. We'll hope to see you out on the trail soon.